Hello everyone, I'm Demi. Welcome to this brief tutorial on how to create an ancient-looking door for your castle, dungeon, or haunted house project. Today, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. To make this project, the first thing you will need is, quite obviously, a door. Today, I'm using an old hollow core door that I salvaged from my local dump, but if you don't have a place to go scavenging and you don't feel like shelling out the cash, you can just as easily use a piece of plywood cut to size. You will also need a can of brown paint, some gray paint, and just a little bit of black paint, as well as some paintbrushes in assorted sizes, including some very small. You will also need some water and a few disposable containers for mixing, and of course some newspapers and or a paint tarp to keep your work area clean. You will also need some boards to make the cross pieces for your door. If you plan on decorating your door on only one side, then you will need board in length of 3 times the width of your door. But if you plan on decorating your door on both sides, then you will need board in length of 6 times the width of your door. Whether you are using new board or old scrap lumber, you don't need to worry too much about the width of your board. Just use a width that you think looks good and that fits the scale of your door. And it's also a good idea to have an extra long board to use as a straight edge. You will also need an assortment of screws, a screwdriver, a tape measure and a pencil, a sanding block, and a saw. Today I'll be using a power miter saw, but as we're only making straight cuts, any type of saw will do. You will also need some hardware to make the handles for your door. Today I'm going to use some plain, inexpensive, modern hitching rings and paint them black using some black metal spray paint. You will also need a set of plain, modern, flat hinges painted black, and I'd also recommend you get some steel wool because it's a good idea to roughen up the surface of your hardware before you paint it to help your paint adhere better. You will also need 2 or 4 faux strap hinges, depending on whether you want to put them on one or both sides of your door. Today, I'll be using some faux strap hinges that I salvaged from an old storm door that I found at the dump. But if you are doing this project on the cheap and you don't have a place to go scavenging, you can just as easily make your own out of some plain black craft foam. Simply make a paper pattern, trace it onto your foam sheet, and then use a pair of scissors or a mat knife to cut out your shape. Old castle doors are often decorated with large nail stud heads, and to reproduce this look, a good ready-made option is plain old round dot magnets. These are readily available in bulk from craft stores and some hardware stores. You are going to use some clear silicone caulk to attach these to the surface of your door. So it's also a good idea to have some water and a sponge at the ready to clean up any excess. Now, if, like me, your door has an old handle or a doorknob hole, you can very easily cover that up using a faux lock plate made from a round electrical box cover. So if you're interested in detailed instructions on how to make one of those, please see my separate video tutorial. To get started, the first thing I like to do is to start painting my hardware, because it's going to need several coats of paint and it's going to take a considerable amount of time to dry. So, if you keep applying coats of paint in between the other steps of making your door, all of your hardware will be ready by the time you need it. Next, measure the width of your door across and cut your boards to size. And of course, remember to sand your boards after you cut them to reduce the risk of splinters. Next, prepare the surface of your door by sanding it lightly. Then paint both sides and the edges of your door solid brown. You'll also want to paint your crossboards solid brown as well. Allow your brown paint to dry and then mix a small amount of gray paint with about an equal amount of water. Then drag your brush across the entire length of your door to create a series of uneven gray lines and to create an old, weather-beaten texture. Use the same technique to paint gray lines on your crossboards. The next step is to make it appear that your door is comprised of separate boards. Divide the total width measurement of your door by the number of boards you wish to paint on the surface. For example, if your door is 29 3/4 inches wide, and you wish to divide your door into 7 separate boards, then divide 29.75 by 7 to get 4.25 or 4 1/4 inches. After drawing your spacing marks, use a pencil to measure and mark lines from the top to the bottom of your door that are 4 1/4 inches apart. Then simply paint over your pencil lines with black paint. And don't worry about being overly neat, because remember, we're going for a rustic look. The next step is to measure the length of your door from top to bottom and mark the exact center point on both sides. Then measure and make 2 marks an equal distance from the top and bottom of your door for your hinge placement. Mark the center point on both sides of one of your crossboards. Line up the center marks on the board with the center marks on your door to place this board in the exact center. Then, lay 2 more boards across the top and bottom of your door and attach all 3 boards by screwing them in at the edges. If, like me, you're using a hollow core door, remember that it is just that, hollow. So you need to make sure that the screws bite into the narrow wooden frame, which runs just along the edge of your door. After your crossboards are attached, measure and make a mark in the exact center of each vertical board. Then, place your magnets on all of your crossboards, using the marks you've made to line them up in the center of each vertical board. Now use caulk to apply your dot magnets and create the look of large round nail heads. But remember to leave one magnet off the edge of your center board because you'll need space to attach your pull ring handle. And don't worry about those ugly silver screws because we are going to come back and paint over them later. Next, attach your hinges. And of course, make sure that your screws are lined up so that they bite into the wooden frame along the edge. Apply a liberal amount of caulk to your faux strap hinges, line them up in the center of your real hinges, and then press them down firmly onto the face of your door. The caulk will dry clear, so you don't need to worry about being overly neat, but if you like, you can use a damp sponge to wipe away any excess. You can also use clear silicone caulk to attach your faux lock plate if you're using one, and this is also a good time to caulk over any exposed screws in preparation for painting them. Allow your caulk to dry, and then, as a final step, use a small paintbrush to paint over your caulked screws to conceal them and do any other small painting touch-ups that you may need anywhere else on your door. And finally, if you plan on decorating both sides of your door, flip it over and repeat the whole process on the other side. And that's it. We've taken a beat-up old door cheaply and easily from trash to set design treasure. Thanks for watching and happy building.